Alright, what's going on, you guys? It's your boy 3 Stickity Stacks in this thing, baby, representing TKOG. And today I'm going to be going over, I'm just going to call it Brave. I don't really like calling it a venture token. It just seems, I just like Brave better. So it's Brave Plunder Patrols. I think this is one of the better variants for Brave. So there's you can virtually splash it in almost any deck with some drawbacks and sacrifices to others, where other archetypes just play it naturally without even having to worry about the restrictions that this engine has. I think Plunder is one of the better ones. Plunder, Prank Kids, and Zephyrs, in my opinion, right now are like the strongest decks to play Brave. Besides that are I guess you could say besides Phantom Knights. I was gonna say meta relevant, but then I remember Prank Kids are pretty popular right now. But those are the three go-tos that I tend to like to play this engine in. I think it's very strong. It does offer some decks don't even have access to the kind of interactions that this deck gives you, so it does offer you something that you're lacking. Whereas other decks, it'll reinforce an already solid playstyle, giving you layers of protection on top of a deck that already had ways to interact and play through certain hand traps. It just enforces that a lot stronger. For example, Phantom Knights weren't really like your run-of-the-mill deck. Like, you weren't just going to be able to just trap this deck one time and it wouldn't be able to keep playing. Phantom Knights were naturally already good with playing through interruptions and playing under turbulence. Adding in the Brave engine, it just made it that much stronger. Where then you've got decks like Prank Kids, where it gives them something that they didn't have before. You've got decks like Zephyra and Plunders, it gives them something they didn't have before. It gives them a form of protection that they can have before they get to the main bread and butter, their main bread and butter combo. And for Plunders, it just synergizes perfectly. Because the thing is, your normal summons actually don't have effects on your turn in the first place. So more often than not, if you are going to normal summon in this deck, you're going to normal a white or a red beard, and you're actually just going to pass turn. Which, there's pros and cons to that. Yeah, it sucks sometimes to not be able to pop off on your first turn if you don't open good. But it also is just another reason why this engine's so good in this deck. And it also does play around Artifact Scythe, which is another unique strength that Plunder Patrols have that other decks do not have, is that you could be locked out of your extra deck on your turn and still go into your extra deck on your opponent's turn. Very similar to decks like Shadalls and Despias, etc. So it's a really cool thing. So what I think that this deck offers is it has a lot of different forms of disruption that give you a level of diversity to cover grounds in different matchups. So you're not really going to have a bad matchup per se, so long as your opponent has the attributes that you need access to. You virtually can deal with any kind of situation. Your Plunder cards give you full coverage, kind of like insurance, if that makes sense. So Mork gives you grounds to deal with cards like DPE, to kill floaters. You can deal with monsters that naturally would be a pain, like especially Shadal monsters. They're normally going to float. You've got Leash to cover your protection from monster negates. It also allows you to snowball into more resources. You've got Blackbeard, which is kind of like your cheat code to get access to anything that you need, allow you to navigate the established boards better, recuperate some resources, build tempo and momentum off of this card. You've got Brawn to cover your Eldritch matchup and other trap decks and of that nature. And then you've got generic cards like Dragite, White Orwell, and even the cheat clapping Thunder King right here. So I think this deck, in the terms of its arsenal and the toolbox that it has at its disposal, I think it's pretty diverse, just being that you just have so many different ways to deal with, it's kind of like Shadalls, but not the same. Shadalls, I think, are still a better deck, but it's the similarity where your engine itself has such a good toolbox that does a lot of situations that you can get out of that other decks can't get out of. You can deal with cards like Inspector Border, where other decks would naturally just fold. Your actual archetype-specific cards can deal with Inspector Border rather well. You also can have a normal summon monster that has 2,500 to 3,000 attack, and you can just play beat down. It's really cool what this deck is able to do. I think it's very, very underrated. Plunder Patrols have been underrated for a very long time, and they will see the light of day very soon. I think that when people start to really see how good this deck is, it'll get a lot more popular, but it does have unfavorable formats. There was a meta where Virtual Worlds and Zodiacs and Trap Tricks and Prank Kids were go-to decks, and in that format it was just a bad time to play Plunders. And then you had Bird Up and Flunderies and Virtual Worlds. That was another bad time to play Plunders. Now you're looking around and there's a lot of decks that are utilizing the attributes that you need. Dragon Link is resurfacing. Sure, Prank Kids are popular, and don't get me wrong, that still can be a pain in the butt to deal with for that specific deck. But you've also got, like I said, Dragon Link. You've also got Phantom Knights. You've got the Tri-Brigade Lyrilisk. I mean, not Tri-Brigade Lyrilisk, the Tri-Brigade Lunalight deck that's running around. You've got Invoke Dogmatica Shaddolls, which has always been one of your best matchups. I enjoy playing against that deck a lot. This deck plays really, really good against that deck. This deck's engine is very good against that deck's engine, conveniently. And I would say, lastly, the deck that I would want to mention is also Eldritch. So, of all those aforementioned, Prank Kids and Virtual Worlds are pretty much the only decks that can still be a pain to deal with. But at the same time, the only pain that it is just that you have to use more of your own resources to basically properly summon your ships, as opposed to using your Plunder's effects like Emblem, White and Redbeard, and Blackbeard to actually cheat them out without using the full requirements to summon the cards. So, with all of those said, it's still a great deck, and I think it has a great place in this meta. It's really good at breaking fully established boards. It's very good going first. Sometimes I just opt to go second because there's certain archetypes where this deck's just better going second against them. But at the end of the day, I would never say that this is a bad deck, and it's a great choice if you just want to try something new and fun. But anyways, going into the deck, for my defensive cards, I'm playing 3 copies of Ciphering Gear Gamma, 3 copies of Infinite Impermanence, and 3 Droplets. So, like I said, Scythe is, like, it's not as bad against this deck. If you have access to one of your beards, you can get Scythe and still be able to play on your opponent's turn, especially if you open both. You'll be able to snowball some resources, right? But the thing is, the reason why I choose these hand traps regardless is because these also work really well against DPE trying to pop Dagda. So this can hit Scythe, this can hit Scythe, this can hit Scythe, or it can hit DPE. It just depends, because sometimes they can chain block it. So because these are also good against Scythe and also just generically good across the board against other decks, I feel these are some of the strongest defensive cards you could choose, because they have that versatility of still being good defensive going second cards, while also all hard countering the Scythe lock that people are trying to throw in any and every deck they can possibly fit all those bricks in. Like, you're going to see Brave, DPE, Scythe, insert the deck. That's the kind of meta that we're in right now. It's not every single deck that's doing that, but the long story short is Brave engine, DPE engine, Scythe, insert the archetype, basically. That's the kind of like meta that we're playing right now. A lot of people are trying to squeeze as many of those engines as possible in one deck. There are certain decks that literally revolve purely around those 3 engines in a deck with just hand traps, and it works. It really does. But because of that, that's why these are some of the strongest hand traps for those reasons. Or not just hand traps, Dropless like they're going second card, but yeah. It also has great synergy with this deck. A lot of your Plunder cards do get good value in the grave. Every single Plunder effect monster actually has an effect when it's sent from the hand or the monster zone to the grave. Your field spell has a graveyard effect, as well as some of your spells in your archetype have grave effects as well. One of the coolest interactions with Droplet is via Redbeard. When you're activating Redbeard's effect, you can chain Droplets, and Redbeard will still resolve to summon whatever you want to summon, and then his monster effect will kick in to equip himself to what you just summoned off of his own effect. So you get an essentially free Droplets, which is really cool. So I am playing the Brave engine. I just think this makes a lot of sense for a deck like this. It gives you protection that you never really had in the first place. I mean, the only other time you're really setting up a negate before you play is if you open Shipping and 2 Under Plunders, and then have a 4th Plunder Patrol card in your hand. So, I mean, it's not impossible, but it's a lot easier to set up a negate this way because this is an Omni negate. And it allows you to apply a lot more pressure going second with least commitment for your resources. With this card, it's a bigger commitment. And don't get me wrong, like, Shipping is really crazy going second with the amount of interruptions it'll force, because it forces a negate when it's activated. Then its graveyard effect gets access to Emblem. That will force a second negate. So, in theory, it baits 2 negates by itself, but it requires a lot more resources for you to open consistently. You know, it's just not a realistic feel. It happens, but it doesn't happen all the time. Whereas with this, it's a lot safer and less resource intensive to set up a way to bait a negate or put one up yourself before you commit into your plays, which is a really big deal. So I like this engine. I think it's great going first. It's great going second. It's something that you can have even through a Scythe. You can still have plays without your extra deck, which is another great thing. I am also playing Called By. So these are like, the Brave is like, I see this as going second card. So I normally run 15 hand traps, but instead I run 9 going second cards with the 6 Brave starters. Well, actually it's 7 right here. And the reason why I think these are still considered going second cards is because cards like Griffin Rider and also Draco back, these cards are arguably better going second in a lot of circumstances than they are going first, especially this card. Doesn't really do anything go first. But when you have access to these going second, it's incredible how many negates you can bait, especially when it comes to cards like Appaloosa exclusively. It can be really helpful when you have access to your right and your Draco can just bounce that card. It's really good. So Foolish is another starter for your Brave engine. The other thing with Called By is Called By not only stops hand traps for you, but it also can target Scythe, Engrave, and banish it. So Called By is another great card to play defensively, while it still protects you from Ash Blossom, since that card can negate every single one of your Plunder extra deck monsters because they all have a part of their effect that involves adding a card from deck to hand. Next up are Plunder starters. I always play 3 Shipyard. I love the graveyard tricks that this card has. This card allows you to get so many more resources than it looks like on pen and paper. It's just a really good card. It gives you a lot of recursion. It allows you to have really, really consistent follow-ups. And it allows you to have a significantly higher possibility of closing the game out sooner than later. Like, I can't even tell you how many times I've set up with Plunders and I'll just have a Whitebeard or a Redbeard on my turn and pass. And by my next turn, I have a full field. I have like 3 Plunder monsters that are like 3,000 plus attack a piece. And I just OTK my opponent. And you always get that moment where your opponent asks you, how much attack does this have? Okay. How much does this have? And then they pick their cards up. Dude, it's one of the coolest feelings ever when you play this deck. Like, it snowballs so fast, you really don't see it coming. And this is one of the biggest reasons why this deck can OTK out of nowhere. Because you just get so many cards out so quickly. And they'll each be getting like 1,500 to 2,000 attack a piece just off this card. And then with your Brawn, oh man, it's crazy, you guys. Honestly, this card is really goated. We have Terraforming just to get more access to it. I'm playing 3 of every single Plunder monster. I maxed out on all these. These are the best cards to see. These allow you to play your engine. These are also really good at going second. Even the Whitebeard plus Bluebeard, people still do not see that coming. It's just because this deck's not that popular. Like, when you normal Whitebeard and special Bluebeard, people don't negate Bluebeards in hand effect. Then you summon White Aura Well. You chain block. You go Well 1, Whitebeard 2, Bluebeard 3. It's crazy. They literally have to have Imperm Veiler or Droplet or something like that. Otherwise, they're negates. Like the Borload Savage that they should have used. Cards like their Hot Red, you know, things of that nature just won't be able to be used effectively. And they're all going to die. So they have to immediately start chaining their cards to get some kind of value out of them because they're going to get blown up. The Plunder engine is just really, really good at going second and going first. That's why Brave Plunder, like I said, you can actually just blind second against certain decks and it's absolutely fine. Like if I play against Eldritch, if I play against Shaddoll Invoke Dogmatica, if I play against Prankets too, sometimes I like to blind second against him. And then the other archetype that I'm trying to think of is Dragon Link. I blind second against Dragon Link a lot. Like a lot, dude. I prefer to blind second against Dragon Link. I think this deck a lot of the times is just better going second than it is going first. That's why you'll also see some Plunder lists that literally are predicated to that playstyle. They're playing Evenly Matched, Lightning Storm. They're playing, you know, the Kaiji package. They're playing Dark Ruler No More in the main deck. Because the deck just feels, a lot of times, it just feels smoother playing it going second. It really does. But it doesn't mean that it can't go first. It's just that well-rounded and versatile of an archetype that it has that perfect balance. Like when you're playing dinosaurs, you know, you can make insane boards going first, but going second, you could break boards that are just as insane as the boards that you can make going first. This deck is kind of similar in that regard, where it's just such a good double-edged sword. You got the perfect balance of offensive defense. It's very consistent. It snowballs. It has a lot of recursion, and it plays so well out to the grave that you can have a second hand. It's just ridiculous, you guys. This deck is really, really fun. It's really cool. I like it a lot. I really do. I'm playing 2 Emblem and 1 Shipping right now, mainly for space purposes, because I'm playing the Brave engine, and I'm also playing 2 Fateful. Whenever I play Brave, I actually prefer playing a second Fateful. I really do. It just doesn't really feel the same. The follow-up with this engine is not really the same without another one, and there's times when you'll get Ogred or Cosmic Cyclone or DPE'd, and then, like, any other Brave play you would make after that, it just really doesn't have that same strength, and you really can't use it to the fullest. I feel like playing the second one, it's just worth it, you guys. Even though it can hurt, because when you draw it by itself, it doesn't do that much. It's still, I just feel like it's worth playing too. I'm playing Draco back. The card's just insane. Like this, I feel like this engine makes Mystic Mine a little bit more lackluster as a card, which I feel is why a lot of people are not playing it. Not just because DPE is a card, like pretty much every deck will have an out to mine initially, just if you're activating it and they have a DPE, for example. But this engine itself makes cards like mine, floodgates, etc. Like this deck can out floodgates, like, you know, like there can be only one. Stuff like skill drain, because this card actually, it's crazy. Let me just shut up. This card's just really, really good, you guys. It really is. Wandering Griffin Rider, this is just the negate that the package comes with. And it's an Omni negate, which is another reason why I feel like I don't need to play Bahamut Shark and Totally Awesome. I mean, essentially, this deck can trade with any kind of interaction, because you have Lease to negate monster effects, and then you have Dragite to negate spells and traps. But it's nice to have an Omni negate regardless, especially when you're setting it up before you even start your initial plays. And I'm on one booty right now. Normally, I like to play multiples if I'm playing Desires, but the card's at one, and it really does conflict a lot with a lot of the cards that I'm trying to play right now. Like, these are all very, very vital. All of these, like, I can't play without these. Well, like, I can, but, like, these cards just become dead draws. And the same with, like, the drivers. So, I just have, like, quite a few one-offs that I'd rather not banish. So, I'm just choosing not to play Desires this time. Talents was an option. I was thinking about it. I was messing around with Talents, but I went back to Imperm because it was just, like, the way it felt was like I didn't have enough interactions on my opponent's turn. Like, when I lost the dice roll, I had so many cards that, like, don't get me wrong, they were insane. Like, Talents, Droplet, Gamma, you know, all the Brave cards. Like, you're just gonna just crack boards naturally with those cards. But I like the feel of Imperm because it gives me another defensive layer for my inboards when I go first. And going second, it actually does stop Scythe, which can be really, really helpful for me. Because I can't OTK through Scythe, but I can play through it. But to be able to fully establish a board through Scythe, like being able to stop it with like Imperm or Droplets, is just better. So that's why I'm on Imperm. And the other thing is, like, there's times where I'll play against Phantom Knights and I'll never be able to set up my talents. Because outside of the Dagda and the Scythe with the DPE lock, they'll just have Fog Blades sometimes, not even hand traps. And I'll be sitting there with a talent that I never got to use. So it's sometimes Imperm's just better. That's why I'm on it right now. And then for the extra deck, I'm on 3 Blackbeard. This is just super important. A lot of the other ones you can get away with playing 2 and just recycle them with your booty, because booty can put them back to the extra deck, believe it or not. But this card just has to be played at 3. It's super mandatory. This card is just the best plunder in your extra deck because it gets you everything else. It allows you to dodge targeting effects. I cannot tell you how many times Phantom Knight players will target one of my monsters, like even Blackbeard himself or another monster, and I will chain Blackbeard's effect and equip it. Blackbeard can actually target any effect monster and then just summon a plunder and equip it. So he'll dodge targeting effects for you. He's really, really good. He helps you to OTK a lot better. To play around Veiler, I'll just make this inner battle phase attack activate his effect. It's really good. Then we have double lease, monster negate, snowballing factor. Every time you trade a resource playing plunders, you will actually pseudo break even. But the reason why I look at it as like a +1 is because A, you take a card from your opponent and keep the same value that you started with. But also B, sometimes the card you discard will get you extra value on top of the search that you're already getting. So most of the time, you plus every time you stop a play from your opponent, you get more than you take from them, and you get more than you started with. So it's really good. Mork right now feels like the best one in this format. He's been the best one for a long time for me. Like being able to banish fusion monsters in the Shadal matchup, banishing DPE. In the Phantom Knight matchup, the card's just crazy. Like, just banishing is so good right now, you guys. This card is really, really solid. And against Eldritch, it's literally like an FTK. You banish their Golden Lords, they're just playing a, like... I mean, it was already a monkey deck, but now you're just eating glue, bro. Like, this deck... Whew. Plunder's fire, you guys. Plunder Patrol is really fire. We have 2 copies of Brawn. This is always a 2 of. I don't see any formats where you'll ever need 3. Because sometimes summoning Dragite's better than this card in the first place. This is just like... It's like a Cosmic Cyclone on legs, basically. I mean, it's spot removal for back rows, and in the Eldritch matchup, I always choose Moark over Brawn, because I'd rather banish the Golden Lord than actually banish the spells and traps, because, like, This can slow them down, but this will actually just kill their engine entirely, and the game will end a lot faster. But you can chain this to their Golden Lands. This card, just being able to out certain floodgates is a lot better. You can even activate this card under skill drain. You can pay cost with it, and then you can chain a card like Forbidden Droplet, for example, and that will allow you to out skill drain. Just for example, Dragite card's crazy. When I used to main deck Nibiru, I would actually reveal Nibiru off this card. It was pretty nuts. White Orwell, this card just has such a huge surprise factor. That's why I love playing it. Groza is actually crazy. This card is just... Whoo-wee! This card is crazy, you guys. I'm not going to lie. It's a soft negate, but the protection that you can get for this card, just predicated to the matchup, you can make this card nigh invincible. We have Almirage for the 1-card plays. We have Geonator. So I like this card a lot because even though your field spell gets you like to astronomically high like amounts of attack power, the thing with this deck is sometimes I will still struggle with either monsters that just have too much attack or cards that can be targeted or destroyed. So Geonator is actually a really big deal for me because this is one of the ways where I can deal with those cards. Nobody really plays around this card, and even if they do, it's just that I have it just in case I need it. I'd rather need it and not have it. I mean, I'd rather have it and not need it than need it and not have it. And then lastly, Abyss Dweller. Best rank 4 in the game, you guys, without a doubt. So that's going to be it for my deck profile. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. I'm definitely going to be touching up and updating on a lot of the archetypes that I haven't went over in a while. I just got to get my playtesting in. You guys already know. I get my playtesting in. It'll be a lot better as far as the content goes because I'll be speaking from experience in a new format versus just talking about my experiences from decks that I played against that aren't even like relevant anymore. So thank you guys so much. God bless you guys. Make good choices. Don't hurt your brain cells. Stay tuned for future content. Y'all be safe and have a good day.